The suicide rate is now as bad as the other worst time in America for people killing themselves, the Great Depression. But it'd be much higher than the present 14 out of 100,000 people if medical advances weren't thwarting so many of today's suicide attempts.
Our suicide rate would be anywhere from 100 per 100,000 to 300 per 100,000, meaning the highest it's ever been anywhere in history, any country, anything.
In Hope Always, How You Can Be a Force for Life in a Culture of Suicide, former emergency department Dr. Matthew Sleeth sees much hopelessness in an America leaving the spiritual behind.
We're seeing the effect of society having unmoored itself from the anchor of God,
which frays what held us together, like family and faith, but leaves room for the devil, who's been encouraging suicide since Adam and Eve.
They were told that if they did this particular thing, they would die, they would surely die, and they did it, and someone was pushing them, and that was Satan. Every time Satan shows up in Scripture, there's a trail of dead bodies.
Faith got Job through Satan's many efforts to get him to kill himself, and Jesus countered the devil with Scripture. Those two, faith and Scripture, are available to everyone, and they do actually shield people. In Hope Always, Sleeth writes, for well over a century it has been known by the medical community that a belief in God has a protective effect when it comes to suicide. But more than just rest in that protection, Sleeth advocates that Christians learn how to see the warning signs of suicide and learn how to protect people contemplating it, how to ask them if they are.
A lot of people are hesitant to do that because they think they might put the idea in someone's mind.
But studies show
asking someone actually decreases the chances that they will. Because it says, I care, and I care enough to ask you about this very difficult thing.
Here are the essential things to ask someone.
Are you thinking about harming yourself? If the answer is yes, you have to ask, do you have a plan? If they're thinking about harming themselves and they have a plan, then you ask, do they have the means? If all of those three things are positive, you got an emergency.
Sleeth writes, if someone's plan is to shoot themselves, get the firearms out of their house. If they plan to overdose, get rid of the pills.
And you need to dial 911.
They're good actions for us to take even if we aren't face-to-face with someone actively thinking of killing themselves.
Putting 1-800-273-TALK, that's the National Suicide Hotline, in your phone so that you can have it to give to somebody just as I cared and I'm prepared and I want to help you.
Here's a way to back off from the edge if you or someone you know is feeling desperate. Slow down and do what Sleeth calls the HALT check, H-A-L-T.
When we are hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, it's not the time to make any decision. Do that systems analysis. Are you hungry? Are you angry? Are you lonely? Are you tired?
It's especially important to teach this to young folks in your life, because without cooling off and taking time to do a HALT check, young people in particular are vulnerable to doing something rash.
We know that many young people in particular, that the time between when they think they're going to commit suicide and when they act on that is as short as 45 minutes.
Sleeth's final words and the message of his new book, Hope Always, is that you actually can save the lives of those thinking of taking theirs. You can move them back from that deadly cliff. The author writes, at some level, every person knows that committing suicide is wrong. I think that most want to be asked whether they are thinking about it. They want to share the burden. Most want to be stopped.
You really can make a difference. If you get them over that suicide crisis, most people will go on to live a normal lifespan.
Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.